Welcome everybody to You Inside You. I am so excited to present today Lauren Tancredi, who is a friend of mine, who has also influenced my finding myself, my spiritual journey, um, created some of this sisterhood of yumminess, of deep connection and intimacy. And so I really love having Lauren with me today. Welcome to You Inside You.
Yay. Maybe I'll find another you inside of you.
Oh, yeah. Oh, do you think there's more layers?
Oh my gosh, I feel like the layers never end, right? It's like the onion continues to just be peeled back every single step of the way.
Yes. So I want to know more about you. I know some about you, but our viewers out there don't know you yet. So can you please tell me a little bit or everybody about you
Yeah.
and a little bit about you?
Yeah. Well, first of all, thank you for having me. And for those of you listening, thank you for tuning in and learning a little bit about me. I am Lauren Brian Tancredi, and I am a human and a woman and a creator and like up to taking massive action in my life right now. I was just sharing that I was like out in my yard getting ready to put down turf. It's like, who do I think I am doing this work? And, I feel like we're always evolving and changing and finding ourselves. I know you had asked me like, when's one time I felt stuck? It's like, like one time I felt stuck many times in life and constantly redirected. And so what do I want to share about myself? Yeah, I would say, as it like pertains to my path and finding myself, right? I would say my door opened really early, like in my 20s when I found yoga. And I started doing a yoga class here in Tampa, Florida at this little gym down on the water. And there was a woman there and she had to be in like her late 60s with this beautiful silver hair that would teach us. And she still teaches this day. Now, mind you, it's 20 years later, which is pretty miraculous. I went and popped into one of her classes, but I remember she had us doing this breathing. And I felt that and you're like laying down and you're inhaling, coming up, and like you're in this circular breath. And I remember being like, holy cow, what was that? Because it just made me had this total euphoric feeling around like who I was being and like the energy inside of myself. And it really started to like kind of define my practice of like, oh my God, there's got to be something more to this life than just what I'm doing and showing up and like going to work every day. If you can access like that level of energy and creativity and like really aliveness within myself, right?
And I love that. And this sense of more, Lauren, I love how you bring that up because I have certainly had that in my life. And I know a lot of the women out there listening have had or are in a situation right now. They're like, oh my gosh, I just experienced something that just opened the door for there's this more, this sense of more. So what brought that more into your life, or what do you think that you were kind of looking for at that time?
As a 20-year-old, and even now, sometimes I'm like, I'm still trying to figure out what I want to be when I grow up, right? And there's like this unlearning that's happening around like the societal conditioning and like having to live our lives for other people. And as women, especially, I think there's a lot of people pleasing that happens in our world, right? Like we're taking care of everybody else before we're taking care of ourselves. And so it's like, why wouldn't we be looking for more? Like, how is that self-fulfilling or like supportive to who it is that we're trying to become in our every single day lives? And so, I think that it's led me onto this really wild and crazy journey through spirituality. But even recently in this last year, it was like, how do I find this aspect of aliveness in everything that I do? Because it's not limited to the yoga class, right? It's not limited to the breathing practice or journaling or anything. It's like, how do I feel like this level of aliveness in my every single day duties, right? It's like, while I'm sitting here and talking to you, how do I feel aliveness? When I'm like doing the dishes, like, like not so much a fun thing that I love to do, but like, can I turn on some music? Can I make it be fun? Can I make this like feeling of aliveness come forward for myself in each and every moment.
Yeah. Isn't that so important? And I think that that's the more that we're talking about here, because there's some women that are going to say, you know, Trina, I don't want more on my plate, right? We're not talking about more stuff in our life, right? It's more of this sense of how can I be more? But it's not more, you know, rich or better at something. It is more that level of depth that you're talking about, right? This level of depth of aliveness, you call it. I love that word. Lauren introduced me to this aliveness. I love it so much because it is a sense of depth in the moment, kind of connecting that you inside you,
Right.
Because when we're really still and we're really in touch with who we really are, then we can feel more alive in the routine, right? In the routines of life. And I really want to kind of go back to a moment where, you know, you're talking about the yoga was kind of the pivotal, maybe door opening into there's more to life, right? There's more aliveness to life. What have been some pivotal moments in your life where you like truly felt stuck or where you felt like you had lost yourself? And how did you get out of that?
I mean, interesting. Sometimes it takes time, right? It's just, I mean, the most recent like stuck, and I mean like recent stuck, right? Because it does, like, I feel like we evolve and like then we face another obstacle and there might be a little bit of stuckness before there's like a shift, right? And so, you know, I would definitely say it's been around my career path. Like, I'm really freaking great at what I do. I work with healthcare practitioners. I've got this amazing client that I've like used to be, they run a software company, and I used to be a power user of like their tech. And I went in and I started teaching the business of medicine for the last 5 years to their practices on the platform. And there was this aspect of like the board, because we got this big like financial investment, wanted me to keep proving myself. They wanted me to show like qualitatively like how much impact my work was making for the people that were in it. And it was like, I literally was beating my head up against the wall for 2 years, trying to like prove myself. And the only department in the entire company that had to prove themselves. And I was literally a one-man shop. Right. And so, you know, and I stayed there because I wanted the financial security of things, right? I knew how much money I was making every single month. I was barely I mean, it was like 10 hours a week, but I also was experiencing so much angst inside of myself that I was becoming like almost submissive to their desires instead of like actually speaking my truth, right? Because after a while, I think, you know, like we get asked something 100 different ways. And if we can't like maneuver around it or stand in our truth or be in our authentic selves, like, you start to become submissive. And so here I am, like just bowing my head, doing the things. And I've literally like stopped working. I put in my notice 30 days ago and I was like, you know what? I'm tired of this story. It had been going on for 2 years. And this is typically how it happens for me, right? Is I talk about it. And then I hear myself talking about it. And then finally I get exhausted about talking about it. And I'm like, you know what? I'm ready to go. And so and I had been talking to my coach about this for years. And she's like, I actually feel like this time you're ready, Lauren. I'm like, she's like, all right, so what are you going to do it? I'm like, I'm going to give him my notice this afternoon. And I did. And it was like the best conversation I could have asked for. Right. It was like, it wasn't about like, hey, you're doing this to me and I'm not getting this. Like, and trust me, I had a lot of those moments in my head about like pointing fingers. And as soon as I point one at him, like 3 are back at me. Right.
Yeah.
And, you know, it was like, look, I decided that it's time. It's been a great 5 years together. I feel like I've done a lot for you in the organization. And here's what I'm going to focus on and what I'm building out next. And he's like, I love what you're doing. Let's partner on that. And now they want to like, I'm going to do a product launch with them in the next 30 days. And so it's like, as soon as I like was like, okay, I'm finally ready to go. I was building other things in the background because if you're like me, like, I don't want to like, I'm like, want to rip off the Band-Aid, but I want to make sure that there's some like financial like security going on, or at least something that I'm excited about. And I got so excited about it. So when I'm telling him there was nothing he could do but enroll in my vision. Right.
Yes.
So, you know, like, I don't know if there's like a thing that makes me get unstuck outside of me going through that process. Right?
Yeah.
I would say like working with a coach or having like an unbiased person. And my boyfriend and I talk about this all the time because he wants to tell me all these things. And I'm like, you need to go talk to somebody so that they can reflect back to you what you're saying and that you can actually process it from the other side. And I feel so like passionate about being like a coach and supporting people because not everybody has that in their lives. And at some point I had this download that like coaching is almost like church, because at least before that people would go and have confessionals and be able to like process their information. And like, as we start to separate from this, like the old ways into the new ways, like we're still human and we still have emotion and we still give things meaning. And so we just need support. And so I would say like, that's probably the thing that gets me unstuck, and that, and a lot of like FU letters and journaling and like all of the things that help me process the human emotions that show up along the ride.
Wow. You just said something, coaching is like church. And I hope nobody really gets offended by that. And we're not saying that it's the same thing, but I think what you're trying to say about it is that in the coaching world or these supportive people that wants the best for you, most coaches out there, they just love the hell out of people. They just want to see people succeed. They just want to help serve people. And when you're around that kind of people, it's just coming home. It's just so supportive. It's like its own faith or its own religion, right? It's just believing in the fact that we're all connected and we all one, in a sense. I love that. I never even thought about that before.
I'm glad that you pointed it out, because I definitely don't want it to have a religious connotation at all. But just like, I'm just thinking of like the old ways, right? If we're unlearning these old ways, like it's a great contrast to like, okay, I had, like I said, I had a download. Like I finally understood why people went and confessed, because it allowed them to process things that they didn't have to hold inside of them. And I feel like right now, as we're going through these pivotal changes in society as a whole, like, and less people are kind of religious, at least from my experience. And I don't know that this is wholly true. Like they don't have that same like support, whether it was supportive or not for them. That's a whole other story. But like they don't have that level of reflection back of, like you said, like love and caring and compassion, and also like the opportunity to open up the limitless potential that we're actually here to see.
So we need to have community. We need to have a way of marinating in this space so we can really hear our inner self. Because my next question was going to be like, tell me about this knowing of, I need to act on this. I need to move on to the next step. I think we can all kind of relate to that, but I also know there's a lot of people out there that has that knowing, and it's probably very close to being actionable. But you don't really know if you can trust it and what's on the other side. And so how did you know that this, like, you inside you was speaking to you, and now you're ready to take action?
I think, well, one, there's part of my commitment and intention for this year. Like every year I have like a word, like I've got intention, and my word this year was magic. But I was also very clear with myself that this year I'm taking action for myself. And so if things are not feeling good for me, I get to start doing something differently. And so this, again, was a conversation that's been around for me. So it was like, okay, now that I'm starting to feel this way again, like it's time to take action, right? And so I think like what you said is so spot on. Like we've been cut off from our second brain, right? Which is in our gummit, our stomach, AKA our gut, or a gummit, apparently.
I love it.
And like, how do we actually start to tap in instead of looking for validation externally? Some of us need both, right? Like there's nothing wrong with that. I think, another piece to that was understanding my human design. That was transformative for me, right? Yeah, just like you're right now. Right? 70% of the population, we're generators, and most of us are sacral. So we have those responses that are like, right? And so it's like, how do I actually start listening to my authority in human design the way that I make decisions so that I can like start to navigate that. And part of it is just about us building and cultivating this inner trust, right? And so we can use tools like this, like human design and journaling and coaching and all of those things. And ultimately, it's like, how do I start to build trust within myself every single day so that I can, when I know, I know, like, and there's just going, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
for me,
so
it's
that
like,
practice, right? Is that practice of knowing yourself, knowing that inner voice, and then you start really trusting it.
Yeah.
Because we're brought up with very different ideas, right? We were brought up with this, or at least I was brought up with this sense that trust is kind of like an external thing, or that you kind of have to you have to earn trust, which is, you know, certainly true to a certain extent. But at the end of the day, we can really only trust ourselves, and we can only trust how we respond to certain situations, and how we set limits, and how we set boundaries, and how we attract people. And the more trustworthy we are, the more we're trusting our own self. I believe that we also attract people in who are very trustworthy, right? That we can kind of trust that. But I love how you talk about the trusting your inside, trusting the knowing. You talked a little bit about human design. I'm sure that there's some people out there that are like, not really sure what that is. If you could just like explain it very briefly on what that is.
Yeah. So human design it's kind of like, it's a blueprint, right? It's a blueprint of the neurotransmission system and the astrology and the chakras and the gene keys, right? And it's like the I Ching, it's like all combined. And so essentially it's like a philosophy or theory that's like, when you are born, you have this imprint of energies that allows you to operate and navigate the world. And so you'll experience things based upon the placement of the planets and the energetic gates that are open, that are thematic in your life, right? And so for me, I'm somebody whose sun is in 32, which is big dreams. And so I like have all of these big dreams, but I also like have the gate of details. And so really my thing is like, how do I make big dreams and take them and find like, and put together the small details, which is why I'm a really great consultant. Because it's like, okay, tell me all of the things and like, I will help you get to go. Right. And so, and then on the other side of it, we attract people with energies that help us complete these bridges or gates. And so essentially the thinking is like, we're all unique puzzles, like pieces of a puzzle, and that will attract people with different energies that complement ours in order to help, like solve a problem, let's say, right? And so human design is just a framework that allows us to understand like, hey, this might be something that you're navigating constantly. So again, for me, I've got 51 in my chart, which is the gate of shock. It's also a shamanic gate. But when I do stuff, it's like it's full on. So yes, I quit my job. I put down my dog. I got a house. I'm repairing the house I'm at. Like I've had like a year of like steadiness. And then all of a sudden, everything comes at me at once. Right. Yeah. That's exactly. But understanding that that's part of my design allows me to be like, okay, it doesn't have to feel overwhelming. You like to shock your system and shake things up. So what are you going to do from here? Right. Yeah. And so again, it allows me personally to like understand the navigation, but also to build the trust around it. And so when I get stuck, I have different tools that I can lean into. As we start to build our own self-trust and really get to understand who we are and who we came here to be. And like, is it like, you still have, free will at the end of the day. Like we still have free will to make decisions and do things, but it's nice to know like, oh, actually these are showing up because it's just the energy that's around X, Y, and Z.
Right. So more understanding of yourself, like who you are, where are you at? And, the community that we have created is really a lot about understanding more of this depth of who we are. Because again, most of us are not raised even talking like that or speaking like that. It's kind of like normalizing this sense of wanting more or wanting to know the deeper layers of ourselves. And a lot of us, Louise and I felt very alone on our journey to finding me, finding my true self, finding her true self, and got lost in a lot of detours of people pleasing, right? Or relationships that were not very sustainable. And I remember not having a lot of people around me that really understood this concept of, personal growth or self-awareness or these bigger picture, like life purpose and who am I kind of thing. And, this community is really all about those bigger questions, really about talking more about, how can I find myself? And also understanding that the people in our lives, they don't understand it on the same level. They're kind of they maybe view life more from fear or from scarcity, or that there's not like limitless ideas and abundance out there, which is totally okay. But I think for us to know that we're not alone in this, and that we sometimes live with people on a daily basis, or we have family members who just don't understand this language, or that doesn't quite understand this, and we feel wrong, right? We feel alone a lot of times. We feel confused, and that was one of the reasons that I probably minimized or kind of muted my inner voice a little more, just to kind of like fit in. Like I didn't know how to use it. When I finally stepped into it, it was more of a relief, and really realizing that there are more people, speaking like this and understanding this. So we're just kind of trying to create more of a normalization of this is a community that just come from a different energy and a different framework. There's no right or wrong out there, but there is more of a perspective of depth in this, and it's okay that other people don't necessarily see that. Did you kind of feel that happening in your life too, where you're like, oh, wow, I just don't think the same as this person? Or
all the time? Not just one time, all the time, right? There's always, I wonder, I call it my big funny sometimes, because sometimes I'll be like in such like high vibration that I start to question all of the reality around me, right? And it's like, and part of like as I started going through my own awakening was like, I didn't want to leave people I love behind. Right. And I felt like, oh my God, if I go and do this journey, like something's going to change. Or like whenever my heart's calling me forward, like to do the thing, it's like my whole world's going to fall apart behind me. And it's like, actually nothing changes except for the energetic that I'm carrying. And if you think about like the rising tide lifts all the ships, like, we like to say in like the spiritual side of things, like, I'm doing healing for myself. That's actually healing the generations of the past and the generations for the future. Yes. And so even if I'm like, they don't get me or they don't understand me, or, like I work with Cambo and plant medicine. And oftentimes because we wear white as a sign of purity and and cleanliness and like, to be sattvic and call in the light, like my family thinks I'm in a cult.
Yeah.
And I'm like, wait a second, you put me in something white to baptize me in a church. Right. Right And so it's like, it's not my job to make them understand.
Yeah.
And I think this is really the core of like people pleasing. Like, it's actually not your job. Your job is to live your life. My job is to live my life. And we'll never, like, it's beautiful that you have this community that you're building where people can speak freely and feel compassionate and like be in curiosity with each other without judgment, or like, and really just like open up themselves. Like that's what we're here to, like, we're here to love and to hold space and to be in exploration. I mean, there's often times where I see these visions of like, there's millions of people waiting to get on this planet. And I say people, but souls waiting to get onto this planet to have this human experience. And so when we think about what you're saying and these people that are in our family that, are experiencing limitation and scarcity and fear, like they're probably only experiencing like 6 emotions at the most in their entire lifetime. And so it's like, when we get asked, like, what is this feeling of more? It's like, I want to be in the fullest human experience ever, which means like navigating the entire wheel of emotion. Like I want to have it all.
Yes, I love that. Yeah. So your message is really saying, you have the permission. Like, this is not your job to have other people understand. And I love how you bring that out, because I mean, personally, that's been one of my hardest things, to really let go of this notion of being understood by others, that you can let that go. Yeah. Like, a lot of people don't understand. Some people do understand, again, why we're creating this group, right? Because it is important to be understood and be seen and be heard and accepted for who we are, not just kind of our fake persona in a sense. Yep. But we need permission, right? We need permission to just go for it and just let things go. You talked about the experience of just like letting things go so new doors can open up, right? Otherwise, we can't go to the next level. And, you know, anybody out there that are just kind of standing on limbo right now and kind of know they need to do something different and they need to act on something, you know, what would your advice be to them right now?
I would say, you know, two things. One, I've been sitting with this question and I'll reflect it back. David Neagle, who I follow quite often, he talks about like abundance and spirituality, but he's asking this question of like, what do you really want? What do you really want? Not what do you think you want? And I even am struggling to answer that question sometimes, because I'm like scared to actually have the life I desire. Is that so crazy or what? Like, really, like if I could actually get it, right? Yeah. The other piece is, how do you take small steps to start trusting yourself today? Right? So it's like, it could be the simplest thing. Like, all right, I'm going to not eat sugar. Don't eat sugar. Because this is what's starting to build the self-trust. Like, we tell ourselves we want to do things, or we should on ourselves. I hate shitting on I should do
I know.
That, right? Stop shitting on yourself. Yes. Right? Instead, it's like, I'm committing to. And once you make that commitment, it could be small. It could be like, today, I'm going to go plant a flower in my yard. Go do the thing, because that's what builds the trust. So that way, when you want to go take the bigger action, like I'm ready to leave my job, or I want to go create a business, or, you know, like I'm going to go back out there and date, like whatever it is, you've built enough trust in yourself by taking all these small actions that it feels really easy. Yes.
Oh my goodness. What do I want? I mean, that is just the biggest thing, you know, working with so many women or people in general, that we know what we don't want, right? A lot of things. Don't like this, don't want that. We complain a lot, but actually knowing what we want, like really want, like the big stuff you're talking about. Do I even dare speaking it? Do I even dare thinking it? And when you really just stop for a moment and just ask yourself, like, okay, if I could just have it however way I wanted it, what would that look like right now? Right. And you're going to surprise yourself with stuff, because stuff is going to come up that you're like, well, I don't know. Where did that come from? Right. That you inside you is starting to come out, and then you can start trusting that, and then making those small steps. I love that. We got to stay in momentum, right? Yep. Got to stay in momentum. We got to take the small steps. We got to act on. We got to just do it. Even just a little thing. Yep. Right? Like getting out of bed in the morning can be on that list too, but
it'd be life-changing.
but something usually that is like outside of your routine, right? Something that maybe a little bit outside of your comfort zone. Something that goes towards this big unknown that you're about to do.
Yeah. Right? You know, and I would say too, just like, because some of you, if you're really stuck, it may be hard for you to think about like anything than what's happening for you today. So a couple things is like, if I know what I don't want, on the other side of that is something you do, right? Trust that, right? So it's like, I know I don't want to wake up at 6 o'clock every morning. Then what's the time you want to wake up? Right. Yes. So start asking those questions so that you can like start leaning into it, because whether you want it or you don't want it, it's going to show up if you're giving it energy. Right.
Yes.
And then the other side of it is like, you don't have to, like, you could just choose something. And just by taking, you know, they say like a journey of 1,000 steps starts with one or something like that. Right. It's like, just pick the destination and you take one step and you may realize, nope, that's not for me. But guess what? This thing opened up over here instead. Right. And so you know, like I have a coaching client. She's like, I don't know. And I'm always like, well, what if you did know? Or tell me what you don't want, right? So that we can get to what you do know. You know, and a lot of times, like, because we've been giving away our power so much, you know, in allowing somebody else to like design our life or living for our parents or our spouses or whatever it is, like we just lost this piece of empowerment that we have. And so it's like, and if you don't know, like look at somebody like Trina and be like, I love when she X, Y's, and Z's. I'm going to go try an X, Y, and Z today.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I know. We have totally gotten lost in other people's expectations, pleasing our parents when we grew up, pleasing our partners, pleasing, you know, everybody, pleasing everything, right? I mean, we also go to work, you know, and if you have somebody you work for, I mean, you kind of have like some obligation and responsibilities, and it just kind of all blurs together. But what you're talking about is really getting into, you know, the deep down, you know, what do I want? Because we have a lot of control and a lot of choices in every single thing that we do.
Yep.
And just starting to play a little bit with the obvious, you know, I do not want this. Okay, but what is the opposite of that? What do I want? And playing with just making that choice.
Yeah.
And then the snowballing happens, and that's what I love the most, right? So how did you end up getting to serve the people that you serve today?
Oh my goodness. You know, it's interesting because it depends on like what capacity are you even asking, right?
Right.
Like, I mean, the yoga journey definitely led to like a little bit of my own spiritual path. And like, you know, I feel like you can only take people to the places that you've gone yourself. And typically we land up working with folks that are a different version of ourselves, right? A previous version of ourselves. So super committed to like doing my own personal work in that way. You know, and what led me to working with the people, I think kind of to your point, I remember when I was 35 years old and I went to a business meeting and I started talking to my business partner about my dad. And he's like, you know, parents have the hardest job in the world. And I as somebody who doesn't have kids, like I never really even thought about it like that before. And I was like, wow, yeah, they do. Like, I don't know that he could ever win. Like, I'm not giving him a raise anytime soon. You know what I'm saying? And I got off the plane that day and I had opened up, it was like one of those like Google Spirit moments when I opened up my phone and there was a guy, Preston Smiles, who is one of my first coaches. And I worked with him for 6 months in a lot of these like exploratory ways and like finding adventure and, you know, stop wearing all black and wear color and be seen and like allow your voice and like really like learning to how to like to feel like I belonged in a world where I felt like alone for a really long time. Right.
Wow.
And creating community and being vulnerable. And as I'm more vulnerable, seeing all these other people that are like, holy cow, I've had an experience like that. Right. But there's just a lot of shame around carrying those stories with you.
Yeah.
And so that kind of like led me into coaching. I had already been doing my yoga. I was a yoga teacher training. I've been doing and facilitating breath work and like having all these profound experiences with people, but not really knowing how to like ground them outside of like, oh, like there's really great openings. And then what? And then it's like you go back into these cycles. It's almost like a rubber band. I think I was talking to you about the other day. It's like you expand and it's like, boom. And it's like, how do you actually allow yourself, you know, when you clear and clean, like to hold the space to be in the creation of what it is that what you want. Right. And so that's why you asked that question. That's why, you know, like, at least for me, it's like, what do I really want? What do I really want? Because as soon as the space comes in, guess what's going to show up for me?
So I really, really love that because I have seen that again in my own growth. I see it for a lot of people that I work with is, you know, we go to a workshop or we go and get inspired somewhere, or even like reading a book, working with a therapist or a coach. You know, sometimes we do it for a little bit and then, as you say, life hits again and we kind of go back in our own ways. You know, how do we really serve people and land at a place where they can land in the marinade, right?
Yeah.
Because there's been so many times in my life where I have wanted to land in a marinade, but instead I landed outside of the marinade and I was just spinning in circles again. You know, how do we really catch people in that, you know, is it created in a community or is it created? How do you do that?
Yeah. I mean, I think it's different for everyone, right? It just depends. And what I would say is like, it requires support.
Yeah.
It requires support, and like, or accountability, or however you want to name it. I know, like, for me, I have an accountability group. We meet once a month. We've been doing it for 6 years. And like, we do like, what are our wins? What are our dreams? Like, and just hold each other like every single step of the way. And when stuff goes crazy, they're the first people I lean into and I call, because they know me. They know what I'm capable of, and they can be my cheerleaders on the other side of things. And I think that's like the thing. It's like, you get to have good support on the other side for people to remind you of your power, because it's really easy for me to go back into my victim story and remember my childhood and make myself not worthy enough, or less than, or not loved, or any of the things. Like, they were all a perspective of my life. And so they still are part of me. I've learned to like love on them and accept them and forgive them, but it doesn't mean that they don't show up sometimes, right? And so as you're doing this work, or as you're stepping into this journey, it's like you said, like, lean into your community, lean into your coach, lean into your family if they're supportive of you, even if they're like, just the sliver of support. And you'll start to learn or ask for what you need, right? Even in our group, it's like, okay, what support do you need in order to make this happen? And when I put my dog down, I was like, I want you guys to send me pictures. Like, whoever I know that's got pictures of my dog, like, that's going to bring me joy over the next couple of months. So all my friends were like sending me pictures and posting things, right? It's like, because I didn't necessarily would have like thought of that otherwise, but I know like those are the moments that make it special for me. And so it's like really learning again to use our voice, to trust ourselves, and to ask for what we need. Because at the end of the day, we're not mind readers.
Right. Like, absolutely. So when we fall back on the community and people really understand us, I kind of see it as we get lifted up to a certain level, but we don't kind of fall back to the level we were before. Because when we are surrounded by people who can kind of hold the knowledge and the knowing, and when we doubted ourselves and we feel confused, they can hold you accountable and say, okay, Trina, knock that off. That's not really where you're at anymore. Oh yeah, that's right. It's kind of my old stuff coming up. Then you can kind of be caught in that and keep propelling forward. So community is very important in that.
Yeah. I mean, Brene Brown, like, she nailed it on the head, man. Vulnerability is a superpower. And as long as you can allow yourself to like really be open, tell people what's going on. Like, especially the people that love and trust, right? Because they're the ones who are going to hold you at the end of the day. And like you said, you may require like a step backwards, but it's not going to be 10 steps. It's going to be like the shorter journey in terms of the recovery on that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I love this, Lauren. Before we kind of get to the end of our little connection today, tell me a little bit about breathwork. I know that that's kind of been part of your journey and in healing and stuff like that. Tell me a little bit about what made that special for you and how you kind of incorporate it into people's journeys.
Yeah. So I practice like a ceremonial or like a shamanic breath work, which is usually done all through the mouth. Now, breath work is powerful no matter how you like slice it, dice it, use it, right? And so the reality is that we're all breathing every single day, right? We are breathing. And when we're actually create awareness of our breathing, right? If we're just paying attention right now, like, how is my breath? Is it deep? Is it shallow? Do I need more? Does it make me feel alive? Right? All of a sudden we've got this like mindfulness and this practice that we can bring to it. And then there's like the conscious breathing, like, how do I get to change it or shape it? Because it will also shape the energetic of like what it is that we're experiencing. And so in these breathwork sessions, like, people have sometimes it's equivalent to doing plant medicine in some ways. Sometimes people fall asleep, which is also what people need. And so it's very like, it's a way that we can access and create DMT-like states with our own body, right? And so for those of you who don't know DMT, like, they call it the spirit molecule. Why can't I say that word? Spirit molecule. And it comes into your body. You have two experiences of it. Comes into your body when your soul enters and when your soul leaves, right? And so we can produce this in isolation through deep breathing, or through fasting, right? And it connects us back to our soul. And I think this is the reason that I really love breath work, because it allows us, again, to kind of like get lifted beyond the human form and see through the veil and actually see what's possible. And really be in co-creation with the universe. And so I love using breath work. It's very clearing. Sometimes it helps release energy and frustration and old story. And sometimes it's just creative and fun and playful. Like, really, it's all about the intention that you bring to it. And again, like when we're having a bad day, or when you're experiencing anxiety or whatever it is, all you have to do is start to pay attention to your breath, and it could shift the entire game for you. And so it's like for me, it's magic, right? It's like the one thing that nobody can ever take from us.
Yeah. Yeah. So mastering your breath, knowing what you can use it for. And it really is the access to the you inside you.
Yeah.
That you can use your breath for that. So if you guys are interested in learning more about Lauren's magic, she might be popping in on our next masterclass this Friday. So you want to sign up if you want to get a little bit of Lauren's magic.
Yeah, come on, let's go breathe, if nothing else.
Go, big action, right?
Love it.
Anyway, Lauren, it was just an honor to have you here today. I just love being in your presence. I love your wisdom. I love your depth of all that. I hope that everybody saw Lauren as a huge inspiration today. Speaking this language and you inside you in so many different ways, through trust and layers and breathing and knowing. I mean, there's so many words that we can put onto it. But at the end of the day, it's just allowing ourselves to let things go, right? Shed some stuff through journaling, or saying no, or closing a door and opening a new one, right? Making those small steps, because you're already on the journey, because you're already growing. Because if you're listening to this, you know that you're already far on the path, because otherwise you would not be listening to this. So that's what I love about this, Lauren. Anyway, Lauren, thank you so much for joining us, and we'll see you on Friday.
See you Friday. Thank you for having me.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye-bye.